Let's talk the atrocity that is Borderlands. Hello, my name is Ben Friedman, and today I am talking about Eli Roth's Borderlands, or it has been described by the media one of the worst movies of the year. I went into it kind of excited. I was the only one who kind of liked the trailer. I thought it looked like fun. I generally like Eli Roth as a director, so I was like, okay, let's give this film a chance. And so I'm like, okay, maybe this movie could be good. So I went in to see this movie on Saturday, and oy vey, is this movie not good. It's actually kind of shockingly not good. Let's just kind of talk about some of my biggest issues with Borderlands, which it's based on this video game. Fully admitted, I never played the video game, nor do I care to play the video game. Realistically, I probably just will never play the video game. Production hell. Finished shooting in like 2021, but then there was reshoots. Tim Miller, the director of Deadpool, had to jump in due to Eli Roth's commitment to the Thanksgiving movie. This movie, it's, post-apocalyptic, I guess. It's an outlaw who forms an alliance with a team of misfits to find the missing daughter of the most powerful man in the universe. My girlfriend, when she saw this trailer, described this as a knockoff version of the Suicide Squad. I would probably tend to agree with that. However, I think this movie needed more of the Suicide Squad energy and less of just trying to be Guardians of the Galaxy. One of my big issues with Borderlands, I thought it played it really boringly safe, which is not a good thing when you have Eli Roth as the director. Eli Roth's strong point as a director is quite literally that he directs some really upsetting, very violent, very cartoonishly over-the-top action sequences and scenes of violence. Borderlands has none of that. It actually probably would have benefited from a more cartoonish quality to it. It really needed to be more over the top to kind of match the color palette, what this movie is trying to be. And essentially, that's probably the fundamental flaw of Borderlands. I found this movie extremely disappointingly bland. And not bland in the sense that I couldn't watch the movie, because I do think Borderlands is fairly watchable. I don't think it's being fairly described as one of the worst movies ever made. I don't think it's that. I don't even think it's by far one of the worst movies that I've seen this year. I've seen much worse that I've reviewed on this channel. Borderlands isn't that. For a movie that is 100 minutes, it kept its pace. It kept me semi-engaged / semi-entertained. Not really entertained, but like enough that I was not noticing the time just like pass by. I didn't feel the length of this movie, but it is really, really just bland. By the end of the movie, I'm just like, I didn't really care about any of these characters. I didn't know any of these characters. I don't think any of the jokes work, but also I just don't remember a single element of this movie. It's been like 4 days since I've seen this movie. I can't really describe you a moment in this movie. I can't describe you an action scene. I can't really describe you a joke. Can't really say much about any of these characters. It's just kind of a nothing movie, which is maybe even worse than being a bad movie. It's at least bad you live in infamy. This, it's just going to be forgotten, and that's what I think Borderlands is going to be, especially with the fact that this movie has such a huge budget. I mean, I've heard upwards of $120 million, and that might be lowballing it. And this movie, I think, brought in like domestically $8 million this opening weekend. That's horrendous. And so, it is just going to be forgotten. But there's so many issues with Borderlands, and I think even if you wanted to give some credit to Eli Roth, in the sense that I didn't think any of these action sequences were horrendously directed. I thought they were stale and overly repetitive, as was the story, but I didn't think anything was particularly hard to follow. I thought the action camera or the action sequences were largely shot in frame. I know, low bar, but that's what we're talking about with this movie. There wasn't anything that I noticed horrendous as a director of action in this movie. It's just that I didn't care about any of it. And to be honest, the reason I didn't care about any of this, I think the cast is just completely overwhelmingly miscast. And again, I know nothing about this video game. I can't speak on that on an intellectual level that people who have, played these video games for years, who know these characters, can speak to. I can only speak to what I saw in the movie. And Lilith being the kind of swashbuckling mercenary slash, person with who actually has a heart of gold by the end. She, there's a sense of fun that this character of Lilith is supposed to have. I had none of it with Cate Blanchett's performance. Cate Blanchett is one of our best actresses working today. She doesn't really convey a tone of fun. I think this movie is beneath her, to be quite honest, and not to say that an actress can't have fun or loosen up in this role. I just don't think she was capable of it in this movie. And listen, I know Cate Blanchett and Eli Roth have worked together. They did that 2017 movie. I think it's called The House with the Clock in the Wall. It also starred Jack Black. And so I know they have this friendship. They seem to have this good camaraderie. I have a feeling Blanchett maybe didn't do this as a favor. She just wanted to explore more of this type of big studio movie making, which she doesn't often get to do. She's just, like I said, she's really bad in this movie. And I know she can hit that dimension because she did so really well with Thor Ragnarok. This one just doesn't give her a personality, and thus you're just watching Cate Blanchett kind of embarrassing herself on screen. I kind of think this is one of her worst performances, and two, just a pretty bad performance. I think this one is truly the worst performance in the movie. Maybe it's not the worst because I have Kevin Hart here as Roland, and listen, I will defend Kevin Hart. I think he serves his role very well as a comedic actor. I think there's movies of his that I've certainly liked. I think he works so well in the Jumanji movie, for instance. And in Borderlands, this is also just I don't even know if this is miscast because I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to take an actor that can fit in this world of absurdity, a little bit of comedy, and also do action and have a name brand appeal to it. The issue with Kevin Hart in this movie as he portrays Roland is Roland doesn't get enough comedic beats in this movie. And thus you're now relying on Kevin Hart to be the action star of this movie. And Kevin Hart just doesn't do that in any way that is convincing. I thought at best he was serviceable. And I think for more of the film, all I just kind of kept thinking was, why is Kevin Hart in this movie? I think Jamie Lee Curtis by default gives the best of these performances as the live action stars in this movie. And I think it's just because she's probably the most comfortable working in genre. And, she does it serviceable enough. I'm not going to go out of my way and say she's particularly good in this movie. Feels like a paycheck role, but she's not bad in this movie. I didn't think much about this Dr. Patricia character. They try to give her emotions with the Lilith character and this kind of maternal bond. Doesn't really work, but again, I think Jamie Lee Curtis at least understands the tone that she's supposed to be hitting. Same with Ariana Greenblatt. Again, she plays Tiny Tina in this movie. I think she's really talented. I don't like this character in the movie. I find this character of Tiny Tina really annoying in this movie, actually. Just irked me, and this character makes no sense. There's just decisions where she's at odds with other of the cast members, and then out of a whim, she's just back and reunited, and they have this bond that just feels like it's been there the whole time. But also at the same time, you watch the movie and you're like, there's no actual bond. This movie didn't lead to this moment. I think she's a talented actress, and I just don't think Tiny Tina did enough for this movie to really get to its end. And then the last performance that I'll talk about, Jack Black in this movie, is Claptrap. He is actually probably the closest thing that I can consider to a saving grace in terms of the performances of this movie. And that's not to say that Claptrap is this amazing character that appears out of Borderlands or that Jack Black just knocks it out of the park. I think the thing that you get when you work with an actor like Jack Black is you get comedy. And Claptrap certainly has a lot of comedy. Claptrap also has a lot of comedy that I did not find funny. Jack Black is able to take some of those jokes, quote unquote, in the movie and make them serviceable to semi-funny. He has a few moments in this movie where I giggle. I don't think I ever laughed at this movie, but I let out a chuckle. And that's the most you can say for a saving grace in terms of performances. Jack Black just gives this performance his all. And the comedy of this movie is completely just tonally incorrect in this movie. And I think it's probably due to the fact that I wouldn't consider Eli Roth a director of comedy. I think some of his best movies have an absurdism in them and have a heightened sense of reality that can feel comedic. but I wouldn't say the jokes of those movies are what makes those movies funny. I think there is fun within those movies, but he is not someone that I just think of naturally comedic sensibilities as a director. The guy who reshot this movie, Tim Miller, actually was probably the better fit to just do this movie from the beginning, because yes, we know Tim Miller can do comedy with Deadpool. We know he can do action with Deadpool and Terminator, Dark Fate. Like, he has those chops in this movie. So this is just a weird mismatch of people working together that really don't belong together. I just think this is way out of Eli Roth's comfort zone. I believe this is way out of Cate Blanchett's comfort zone, Kevin Hart. Like, just nobody really fits in this world, and you just then get this kind of weird mismatch. I will say, if the goal of this movie was to convince me to play the video game, this movie failed. And it's just this $120 million. The film itself doesn't look very good. The sound design, like, it's kind of whatever. The colors of this movie, I think it kind of has that the 2016 Suicide Squad movie has this issue. A lot of just bright colors. And I think the bright colors are supposed to communicate to the audience, we're having fun here, aren't we? And the answer is no, we're not having fun here, because this film fundamentally doesn't understand what fun is. Borderlands is a mess. I can't recommend it in any good consciousness. I don't think this movie fundamentally works on any real level. And even when I was slightly above boredom for this movie, where I just wasn't fully bored while watching it, even then the most it achieves is, that's not terrible. And that's not the bar that we should be setting for movies. And that is why Borderlands, 1.5 out of 5 stars.